I went through the University of Arkansas and got my degree, Bachelor of Science in Education, with teaching field biology. And I taught some biology and physical science. And went back to get a master's degree, and went to Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, and got very interested in herpetology, the study of amphibians and reptiles. And for our master's degree, my major professor was a herpetologist, amphibians and reptiles. And he got me really interested and took a course in herpetology and really enjoyed it a lot. I didn't know anything about amphibians and reptiles much before then. And there was a fish hatchery about 60, 70 miles away from Nacogdoches in Jasper, Texas, that had 63 earthen ponds. They ranged in size from 3/4 of an acre to, maybe 5 acres in size, the ponds. They had 63 ponds. And they wanted somebody to come in and see what types of snakes were there, how many snakes there were approximately, and what they were eating. Since there were earthen ponds and there was fields all around, there was a lot of snakes, and they felt that the snakes would come in and eat the fish. And this was a fish hatchery, a state fish hatchery, and they supplied fish for lakes and ponds all across Texas. And they wanted to know if they needed to put in a snake fence, a fence that's embedded down into the ground and very small mesh where snakes can't get in to eat the fish. But they want to know if that was necessary to do that, because 63 earthen ponds is a big area, and that's an expense. So they wanted somebody to come in and find out what types of snakes were there, if they ate the fish, any of them, what size, and how many they would eat, and if it was necessary for them to go to the expenditure of putting in a snake fence to keep them out. But they had all types of fish there. They had bass and sunfish and you name it, all types. And they would spawn there until they had little fingerling fish and on up to full size bass and everything. Then stocked the state lakes. So I agreed to go down there and catch snakes. And we did it over a period of a year. But anyway, I would do that every weekend for like a year and take them back to the lab and all that. There was a number of different experiences while I was doing it, that unusual things. There was nobody else out there. The people of the fish hatchery were gone to bed for the night. There were just a few little lamp posts around where I could at least see the different ponds. It was interesting, it was fun, but it was long and grueling hours too. And you had to be very, very alert. I mean, when you're going by snakes, you never know what's going to happen. There was one time that I got several snakes at one time. I'm trying to remember what the sequence was. I remember, I had grabbed one with the tongs and had pulled it out of the water. And I looked down there and there was one that was crawling toward the water, and I had to grab my pistol and shoot it, and there's another one down there, and I had to put my foot on it to pin it down, so I got 3 snakes at one time.
That's awesome.
And I had to be very, very careful and not to shoot my foot or something. I was the only one out there, so if anybody got shot, it'd be me and the snakes. But it was interesting, and I would take them back and then do the work, and I would report back and at the end of my research. And they used that to decide whether to put up the snake fences or not. I thought it was a fun time because I got to not only catching the snakes and dealing with them, but since my master's degree the thesis was on that, but it was all geared around amphibians and reptiles. And it was really interesting out there because I could hear different sounds of the frogs and toads. And I had a record at home that
yes, you did.
the different sounds of the frogs and toads of the eastern United States.
Matthew and I grew up hearing that.
I could hear the sounds, I could tell what it was. It was a lot of fun. And I would collect those if I could catch some of those and take them back to use in teaching and all. But it was a lot of fun and very interesting and a little bit dangerous. I'm trying to think, there was one time that I had cottonmouth that I'd caught, and I got him behind the head, and I was trying to put him in the snake sack, and I was going like this and putting him in, and it went fang, and his fang got caught in my skin, and made me a little bit nervous, because if they venomate, if they pump those venom glands, then it goes into you. If they don't, you're okay. But I'm still here, so it must not have venomated.
We're glad you survived.
Yes, me too. But anyway, I did that for a year, and the research showed even though the snakes did take in a lot of fish, and particularly the fingerlings, and they might eat a lot of them, they decided not to go in to put in a snake fence that was embedded in the ground where snakes couldn't get in at all, because it'd be a big expense to go around 63 of these ponds around the whole fish hatchery. It was a state fish hatchery in Jasper, Texas. But anyway, it was a fun experience, and I used that experience in teaching when I was taught biology. The kids always like to hear about it and the tales from it. I remembered more about it then because it was fresh in my mind. Right now I'm just recalling many years later. But I would take different specimens in, and kids would bring in snakes too, and amphibians and reptiles. What's this? What's this? We call this. We ran over with a lawnmower. Can you tell what it is? What looked like spaghetti?
Oh.
Sometimes you could tell what it was. Sometimes you couldn't. But anyway, that was kind of my experience working the fish hatchery in Jasper, Texas.
I feel like you're Indiana Jones, but the one that likes snakes, because he hated snakes. So you're the snake wrangler.
Well, I never felt one way or the other against snakes, really. And so I didn't go into it with a fear or anything, but I did go into it with a healthy respect, because I have books that show what happens with snake bites and all that, and what you have to do for the bites and all that. So I had all that on my mind just in case. But it showed some pretty gruesome pictures and talked about people having to have fingers and stuff amputated.
No, thank you.
So anyway, it was a neat experience. It was very interesting. Was interested in biology and ended up being a biology major, and ended up teaching biology 1, biology 2, and some physical science. That needed a physical science teacher. That wasn't my area, but it gave me a background for biology too, in teaching that. Had students, if they had snakes or amphibians, as they call it, they could bring them in. I would show them to the class and tell them a little bit of life history of them. Or if I had some, since I'd had experience in catching snakes, if I caught some, I would bring them in to class and show them to the class and give them a little bit of the natural history of it and what it ate and where it lived and all that kind of stuff. Some were poisonous, some were non-poisonous. And as I would let the students come up, because many of them had never touched a snake. They'd seen them and ran from them. But a lot of students thought that snakes were slimy. They didn't realize that they had dry scales. And so I let them come up, and I would hold close behind the snake's head and hold the posterior end also. They could come up and slide their hand. Oh, it's not slimy, it's kind of smooth and a little bit rough depending which way you move your hand on it. And there was one day I was doing that, and I was holding it like that, and a kid reached up and goes and squeezes the snake. Well, what does the snake do? Here I'm holding it, the snake goes and bites me. So needless to say, that student flunked. So at least in my eyes.
And you survived.
And I survived, yeah. It was not a poisonous snake. I wouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah.
But it was one that does bite readily.
Ooh, no,
It's probably broad-banded water snake, something like that, or yellow-bellied water snake. But it was quite a surprise to me, and the kids jumped back. There were,
oh my goodness,
6 or 8 kids around watching. Others
I bet
sitting
they
down, didn't
freaked
want to
out.
get close, standing away. And boy, when it bit me, they all just jumped back. And of course, I probably screamed.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was a surprise anyway.
For sure.
But it all turned out okay.
Okay.
back when Melinda and Matthew were younger and going to Christ Episcopal School, they'd asked me to come up and do a demonstration or bring in some snakes, and when they were studying that type of thing in school. And so I brought up some snakes to show the students, and had them in snake sacks, and I would pull them out and tell them about the natural history of it, and all about it, what it ate, and what it did, and whether to be afraid of or not to be afraid of, whether it bite or not bite. And a lot of the students thought that the snakes were slimy. And so I would hold the snake behind the head and let them come up and touch it. And they didn't know what I was going to pull out of the sack next, what kind of snake, and whether it had poisonous or non-poisonous ones. And the class was all kind of grouped together, sitting in chairs, pulled all around a big group. And reached in the sack, just a minute, boom! And I jerked my hand out, and there's a snake went flying through the air right in the middle of a patch of girls, screaming and hollering. And well, it was a rubber snake. It was all planned ahead. Melinda knew ahead of time.
I may have been in on it.
She may have been in on it. But that got their attention anyway.
Yeah.
And they watched from then on.
They never forgot their snake lessons after
They
that.
never forgot their snake lessons. That's right. Yeah.
They would.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And you became cool Father Malloy.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Everyone enjoyed you. I just wanted to say that this is the best dad ever in the whole wide world. He is the kindest, most loving, most generous, most self-sacrificing, funniest,
Weirdest.
a little bit of weirdness in there. Matthew may call you weirdo. But yes, he is just the best dad ever, and everyone knows that Father Malloy is amazing, and I'm so blessed that God gave me him as my dad.